Depth reporting on a topic we've been watching, and tonight we're taking you out west, where there's a huge controversy over the management of America's wild horses, which cost taxpayers, me and you, tens of millions of dollars every year. You can see them here, this herd, just some of those Mustangs running across public rangeland in Nevada. Now, they're protected by law. They are allowed to roam free, but they're also competing for resources with native wildlife and with cattle ranches on the same land. We're talking water, food, space. And some of the horses rounded up by the government end up in kill pens. NBC's Erin McLaughlin has been looking into this for months. She's got our story.
Outside Palm Springs, California, horses like Dahlia, once running wild across the West, are now tame.
Grab more rain.
Under the expert care of horse activist Marissa Mendoza.
It's hard to believe that she was a wild horse, living her best life, rounded up, ridden off. And now she's riding with me.
Dahlia was captured by the Federal Bureau of Land Management as part of its effort to control the wild horse population. But not all horses survive the roundups. This video from mid-July shows a stallion desperate to escape, snapping its leg, trying to jump the fence. A spokesperson for the Bureau told NBC News in part, injuries to wild horses during gathers are rare, noting that BLM and contract staff adhere to strict practices and humane handling standards during gathering operations, and that they continue to assess the gathering process. But some call it part of a decades-old battle playing out over millions of acres of federally owned land known as the Range.
The wild Mustang is the symbol of America.
Pitting horse advocates like Mendoza
Every car that you used to see was once a horse.
against cattle ranchers like the Nevada-based Fellini family. They argue with few natural predators and limited resources, there are too many horses and they're pushing out the cows.
In the battle of cattle versus horses, who's winning?
Horses are winning. Wherever there's an allotment with horses on it, horses are winning.
Wild horses are protected by a 50-year-old federal law tasking the Federal Bureau of Land Management with their oversight and care. At the same time, the Bureau has issued nearly 18,000 permits to cattle ranchers, allowing them to use public land, getting millions of dollars in livestock grazing fees in return. Anna Fellini and other ranchers argue the Bureau of Land Management is not doing enough to deal with horse overpopulation.
Is this a crisis?
Yes. It's a crisis beyond crises.
The Fellinis are legally obligated to let the horses run wild on the land their family has worked for more than 150 years.
The Bureau of Land Management will come out and tell us we are using too much forage. We have to remove our cattle. But they won't remove horses until no forage is available at all.
Fellini says the land has suffered as a result, showing us a section she says is now completely unusable, almost devoid of forage or edible grass.
How long has this land been like this?
30 years.
With more than 80,000 wild horses and burros on the range, Holly Waddell, the Bureau of Land Management's Horse Program Division Chief, acknowledges there are 3 times as many animals as there should be.
That is a crisis that's headed towards ecological disaster.
And so every year, the Bureau rounds up a predetermined number of horses by helicopter, sending thousands to federal corrals. Last fiscal year, the Bureau spent over $80 million caring for captured wild horses. In order to free up badly needed corral space and save taxpayer dollars, in 2019, the Bureau started paying people federal money to adopt up to 4 horses, giving them $1,000 for each horse.
It shows all of the herd management areas and the herd areas.
The idea being the horses would go on to live productive lives off the range. Waddell says as a result, adoptions increased to record levels.
The adoption incentive program has been successful.
But a 2021 New York Times investigation found that some adopters were pocketing the money, and as soon as they could, selling the horses at auctions frequented by slaughterhouse brokers. The article sparking outrage among the horse advocate community.
We are sending droves of these federally protected animals who helped to build this country to slaughter.
So what's being done to stop this exploitation?
We have made several revisions to the current adoption incentive program.
But 2 years later, an NBC News investigation confirms that federally branded horses are still in the international slaughter pipeline. After obtaining federal records, we found federally branded horses appearing to be for sale in self-described kill pens, like in this video. And we matched the brand numbers of the horses with their adoption paperwork, appearing to confirm taxpayer dollars had been handed over to the adopters in exchange for the horses. The Bureau of Land Management says it monitors adopted horses for a minimum of 1 year, and during that time conducts health and care inspections, requiring a certification of good health before title is transferred, noting it is unaware of any untitled horses being sent to slaughter. But because the Bureau does not keep tabs on horses once the adoption is complete, it is impossible to know the extent of the problem.
So you're not actively monitoring these auctions for BLM horses?
We're managing wild horses and burros that are protected by the Act.
Advocates argue the entire program is unsustainable, in part because even for well-intentioned adopters,
Gosh, look at that little fuzzy.
it's very difficult to tame a wild horse like Dahlia.
We would leave them as they were, as they have been for centuries. They are exactly what America represents, and that is freedom, resilience, strength.
If you get rid of every cow, then the horses are still going to be completely out of control. You have to manage the horses.
Out in the Wild West, there's no obvious way to rein in America's wild horses.
Erin McLaughlin is joining us now. Erin, we're so glad to have you with us and have this story with us too. When you look ahead, what do you hear from people as you've laid out on all different sides of this issue about a solution? What's the long-term plan here?
Well, Holly, all sides seem to agree that science in the form of fertility control could be the solution. The issue being the current vaccines in existence require multiple shots, something that the Bureau says is difficult considering we're talking about a wild horse population. That being said, they have funded several studies into longer-term shots, but that could be years away. Holly?
Can you pull back the curtain a bit for us, Erin? Because you and our team have been working on this for months. I want to say almost 6 months at this point, if not longer. Walk us through the steps that you took to investigate. What is it? Listen, it is a complicated and it is a nuanced issue.
Yeah, it is fascinating. The Hallie Jackson Now incredible producer Mark Scaglione, as you say, and I have been working on this for months, and to be able to explore all sides of the issue, to be able to go out to Palm Springs, to see a horse sanctuary firsthand, to see the beauty of these animals, their potential, and then as well to get out there to Nevada, to the range, to talk to ranchers who say this is an existential issue for them. And one additional point to that, they were telling me that they own the water rights to much of this range, so they are driven out of business, as they say they are being, by these wild horses. They take the water with them, jeopardizing potentially the remaining horse population. It's just another illustration of just how complicated this is, Hallie.
Just how many layers there are to this whole thing. Erin McLaughlin, we are so glad to have you bring this story to life for us here on the show. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Still to come here on the show, a new legal fight in the F1